All right. The next item on our agenda is to retire to closed session. Prior to doing this, I want to give anyone that has a desire to make a public comment to provide you the opportunity to do that now. We will reconvene after our closed session to report any actions taken, if any. And there will be an opportunity, if there's anybody left, to make a public comment. But I just thought, for those of you that don't want to wait around, public comment time is now. So, Greg, would you like to go now?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually wanted to make a comment about the science plan first. And just as you've heard, we're actually quite pleased. Councilwoman Gray alluded to this. There's a lot of good work that Peter's undertaken, and we appreciate that. This, as you know, goes back to the National Research Council report that talked about what was needed to really move the agenda forward of science in the Delta. It's a challenging task, but we're encouraged by the direction and expect to continue to participate with him in the development of that. Two major issues in the outline. You see there's a major emphasis on the need to have better synthesis of the science and data. We agree with that, but that synthesis can only really be effective if the collaboration of everybody is part of the foundation of that synthesis, which right now we don't really think is the case in terms of what's happening. And also, he mentions the importance of the science community. And one of the things that we feel pretty strongly about is that the public water agencies need to be part of that science community. The development and initiation of the state and federal contractors water agency was driven primarily by a desire to increase scientific capacity and capability, which I think we've demonstrated over the last couple of years with some peer-reviewed articles and studies. And SWFCA itself, that's a primary mission, and its member agencies have put a lot of resources into scientific capacity. And that goes for the NGOs as well. Those that have the scientific capacity should be engaged at the table, too, to make sure that we have that real collaborative effort. Two other issues, and Chris made a comment a few months ago, not necessarily on this, about being careful not to stir the pot too much or annoy people too much or whatever it was you said. But in this instance, that's going to be part of the challenge, and I think part of what Peter is fighting against is there's a lot of course, institutional inertia to the sort of dealing with this and bringing more people in, and so that's a real challenge. And then finally, I think what will be important is how you take the product as part of your implementation of the Delta plan, and that you're going to need to sort of push the idea, and I know that Chairman Eisenberg gets on this a lot. He always wants an answer to a question from the scientists. And the fact is, as Alf alluded to in his discussions about the federal activities under CalFed, is I think the council has a role in ensuring that the agencies utilize the discretion they have to make decisions in uncertainty. And you do the best you can based on the science that's presented to you, but I think one of the values that this council can have is not waiting for the answer, because it may never come, and being able to utilize what you get out of the science program to make better informed decisions, still in uncertainty, but you got to make a decision at some point. So I don't know if you want to take other comments on the science plan, or I've got a comment on 449 from earlier.
Back up the truck and unload everything you got.
All right. Very more quickly on earlier today during the legislative report, you took the watch position on Senate Bill 449, and we appreciate that. And just wanted to bring a couple specific issues to you with the current language. It seems on its face that the statute is basically intended to codify your WRP1 Section 5003 of your regulations, and putting aside our differing views on that specifically, I think it's important to note that the language of the statute is not consistent with your policy in multiple ways. First, it talks about reducing dependence on the Delta rather than reducing reliance on the Delta. And those are terms of art in the water management community, as you know, and the legislative history actually shows that early versions of the statute started with dependence, and eventually it moved to reliance for reasons that were clear to those doing the legislation. So that's the first issue. The second issue is that adds, and Jessica referred to this, it adds the notion of the department will not provide direct expenditure of funds. It's not just grants and loans, but direct expenditure. So that could raise a question of if there's a particular agency that may not be in compliance with something, could the department undergo maintenance of the state water project in that service area, even though it serves a whole bunch of other folks down the line. So this issue of direct expenditure is a question. And then finally, in your policy, as you know, you have 3 criteria that would have to be violated for there to be a problem. You know, you're not complying with the law and the water management plans. It's got to have a detrimental effect in the delta on the environment. And then also that and I forgot the exact wording, but basically you're doing this action because the agency that's not in compliance is sort of making you do the action. It's the reason you're doing the action. And that was kind of the savings clause for the water wholesalers who were concerned about their member agencies, maybe one not being in compliance and then not being able to serve everyone else. That savings clause is not in the language either. So there's a question about what would happen for a wholesale agency that was trying to do something and they found some agency that wasn't in compliance. That savings clause isn't here. So I just wanted to put all those out on the table for you, knowing you're taking a watch position, but I think it's important that if you're going to take a position on something that's codifying your policy, that it be consistent with your policy. So, thank you.